Hey Laura, Nicole here. All right, we're going to get started with your relationship reading with Adam, your friend. Um, and starting first of all, what we're going to do today is take a look. Of course, we've done your birth chart before, but we are going to just take another peek at it and go over the chart from sort of the relationship perspective. We'll spend a bit more time on Adam's chart, and then we'll take a little look at the composite today. I have tried to put you higher up in my list, but I do have currently about 320 plus clients right now, so the wait is a little bit extended, so I'm sorry about that. I was starting to get like on a roll, and then I got my car accident. I'm like, oh, it's a year of having Uranus trine your ascendant. I tell you what, you've got something very similar happening in your chart. So does Adam. Okay, so let's, first of all, I just want to make sure I've got correct birth info for you guys, and that way if I've, made some sort of an error, you can let me know. Hopefully that hasn't been the case. And for you, I've got your birth date entered as April 18th, 1975, 12:18 p.m. birth time, and Gadsden, Alabama. For Adam, I have a birth date of April 17th, 1985, birth time of 4 o'clock p.m. from mother's memory, and born in Chattanooga. Hey, that's where they have the aquarium, Chattanooga, I think. Okay, so obviously you guys have some similarities in your chart. You were asking me questions earlier about your nodes, the nodal axes, and how you had that little flip-flop conjunction that you had seen with the nodes with, it sounds like with his partner. And so we're just going to navigate. We're going to have fun with looking at these charts and see what we can sort of figure out from your interaction with each other, from your connection. And we'll approach this from kind of a soul-based perspective, because I think people that are in our lives that are significant, I think that we've had past encounters with them. So, okay, so starting first with you, we've got your Sun, your Mercury, Chiron, and Ceres all in at the end of Aries from 23 to 28 degrees, which means Uranus, which has been transiting, conjunct these planets for this past year or so, is sort of dancing around on very important part of your birth chart, the identity, life path. It's a time where we can feel a sense of restlessness and a need to feel liberated. Uranus to Chiron is an interesting one. I have an Aries friend who's experiencing this as well. He's born the same year as you, so his Chiron's in the exact same place. And I haven't talked to him for a while, but I know there have been some things in his life unexpectedly, perhaps, that have happened that have maybe opened up some old wounds, like with an old girlfriend getting married and things like that. So, it can be a time. Chiron does represent, it does have to do with our health to a certain extent as well. It's not only that sort of the wounds that we carry inside of ourselves emotionally, but it's also actually our health on the outside. So, Uranus being a planet that can bring unexpected sort of energy into our life, unexpected events, that kind of thing. You perhaps maybe have had something's come into your space where you're like, what do I make of this? Now, when Uranus moves to, it's currently, I believe, I don't have my ephemeris pulled up, but I'm pretty sure it's currently at, just pulled up really quickly, about 27 degrees. And so it's, conjunct your Mercury, and basically your Mercury and your Sun. So when you have your Sun and your Mercury right by each other, that means we're going to have an identity, a personality type where we're trying to figure out ourself. It's a pretty subjective personality type. The soul has come forward with, and you've got a North Node in the 5th house too, so you've come here really to self-express, to understand who you are, to move from a place of authenticity as well. So with this conjunction that you have in the 10th house, I've seen some folks, if you've had a career that you've had and enjoyed, and it's not necessarily that you're going to, like, if you had a business that you're going to sell it per se, but there's a quality of needing to do one's own thing when Uranus is moving to the 10th house, So if you've been doing something for work that hasn't satisfied you, a lot of times you see people kind of branch out on their own, or at least start little projects that are sort of their own thing. I don't know if necessarily that's the case for you per se. You have Aquarius in the 7th house on the cusp, so Uranus has probably activated your relationships with other people. It's probably been a bit more about bringing into your space unorthodox relationships with people. So that would be my guess. Now, at any rate, Uranus to Mercury also, it's kind of the free thinking. This is a transit where our minds get electrified and we start to want to look at things more rationally. We think many times start thinking more about consciousness, and there's this sort of logical, I don't know, this interest in science a lot of times will kind of pop up, or just liberating oneself from thinking in old thought patterns and needing to sort of like reinvent how we look at ourselves and how we look at the world around us. So if that's been the case for you, that would be the Uranian influence. At the same time, Uranus, has been squaring your moon in Cancer in the 12th, and that was more so last year, but Uranus square moon is one that is, especially in this aspect, it's kind of a Capricorn aspect, meaning the rules, the rigidity, the fears that we have about our emotional lovability or emotional security kind of get like we have something happen that forces us to face that, and to liberate us from maybe the things that have left us in the past feeling really insecure. It can be very uncomfortable though. It's not necessarily like a fun time, but Uranus at the end of the day is here to free us from things that aren't serving us any longer. And also it is a higher octave of Mercury, so it's here to sort of engage you mentally into these processes that are emotional, that are really unconscious. Like, why do I always do this particular behavior, or why do I pull these people into my life? That kind of thing. You will soon, shortly, as Uranus moves into Taurus, you will have it trining, or I'm sorry, squaring your ascendant-descendant axis. And so this is making a big T-square. You versus partnership, right? It's the self versus partner with another person. And what does that look like? What does that look like, for you? So that tends to be, again, a time where we don't want to necessarily, it's not a good time to get into a relationship that you like with someone where you're like, I'm going to marry this person and be with them for the rest of my life, right? It's not the time for that per se, because you yourself are going to be undergoing a lot of shifts. It's a time of individuation personally. Great time to make new friends. Great time to sort of allow yourself to fly your freak flag a little bit. It's a good time for experimentation, that kind of thing, to a certain extent. Some people, it affects them, the ascendant is connected to Mars, so it's the sexuality. So for some people, it can be a time of experimentation in that area. And you got, your Mars there in the 8th house. And so that placement's one where it's a Mars and Pisces, which Mars and Pisces have this ability to merge with a partner, and they don't even necessarily always have to be touching. Or if they are touching, there's a spiritual, like, this ability with the physical body to kind of join and merge with this other person in a way that can be really spiritual and healing. So you just, you'll have a sextile to that Mars happening at the same time as this square to the ascendant-descendant axis. And so in my mind, I would kind of think it's not going to be hitting your moon, which is good, but you will be experiencing Pluto opposing your moon. So, relationships that may have a quality of, dredging up things inside of you that could be painful, things that could be a time where we may be even emotionally a little bit obsessive or compulsive, maybe doing things from a place of, we're not really thinking through it, we want to do it, so we do, that kind of thing. So just be cautious in those areas, of course. Anything that has to do with your physical body, with accidents too. Be really careful driving. I have a girlfriend who's got a motorcycle who has something like this happening, and I'm like, wear your helmet, be safe, I don't want you getting hurt, that kind of thing. So just don't let your, there's kind of just a devil may care attitude. Okay, now that being said, just want to touch on a few other things from my own brain here, because I know your chart pretty well. Okay, let's take a little peek here at Adam's. So he was born like almost exactly 10 years after you. Isn't that great? And his sun is at 27 degrees, so it's conjunct your Mercury. Which means basically when that happens, there's this quality of who he is as an individual speaks directly to you, and also the way that you communicate, that Arian quality. These later degrees of Aries have a Sagittarian quality to them. So there's an element of honesty. There's a gritty truthiness, that you have with the Sagittarius, these later Arian degrees. And there is a fiery, passionate, just kind of, I just downloaded a playlist. This is a metaphor. It's like, what was the name? Like, it's like a gritty rock or something like that. So it's very authentic. It's just playing the blues guitar, and it's messy, but it's really beautiful at the same time, makes you feel something. That's kind of how I think of these later degrees of Aries. Um, and Sagittarius is a sign and archetype that has to do with truth, So in a sense, his Jupiter in Aquarius is going to be very important in the fifth house because that says this is somebody who's going to believe in independence, freedom. He's also a moon in Aries at the second degree of Aries, which is very much a very Aryan moon, right? It's the beginning of Aries and it's in the seventh house. And so there's a quality here of, or can be selfishness that happens with Aries, you have your moon in Cancer. So there's a difference between a Cancer moon, and especially with it in the 12th house, and an Aries moon. Cancer moons are more sensitive, and they're both, though, what's interesting, Cancer and Aries, they're both signs that are very subjective, seeing things from one's own vantage point. And so there can be a quality of selfishness, even, I would say. Now, they're different, though. So moon and Aries, just a lot of times they need to feel like they're free to instinctively do what it is that they want to do with themselves. They don't have some new challenge or new experience in their life. Boredom is like the worst thing for moon and Aries. I have my moon right by his, so trust me. It needs to be fun. Life needs to be fun. It needs to be full of like adventure or just something to look forward to. Moon and Cancers are a bit more security conscious. They sort of want to know what to expect. They're not to say that you don't like adventure. I mean, you have a sun in Aries, but there is a quality with the moon of Cancer of being a bit more self-protective, self-preserving than versus the moon in Aries. Moon in Aries is self-preserving too, but what they do is they just move on. They'll just, like, if they feel like someone's hurt them, a lot of times they'll just cut their losses and leave. Moon in Cancer tends to hold on longer and tends to be more, like, there's more of that need for reassurance, I suppose. Now, he does have his moon in the seventh house, and so seventh house is our Libra house. It is the house of relationships. A lot of times with men that have this placement, there's this quality of looking for the mothering from the partner, looking to be nurtured, kind of like through the partnership. And for some men, it's that they take on the role of kind of mothering their partner, taking care of their partner. And I've seen other people do the opposite, where now he has a Virgo rising and a Pisces descendant. So that to me says he's probably someone who is, the way he does things instinctively is he's going to be more comfortable in that role of sort of like taking care of the other person. So if he's got a girlfriend that is not, how some people don't give themselves all to you, they just kind of give you a little bit at a time, but it's not everything. And there's a quality of you having to work for their love. That might be the kind of partnership perhaps that he looks for, so yeah, there's an element with his Pisces on the descendant of relationships being a place where there can be an elusiveness. It's like looking for this perfect relationship or perfect person, and it being a bit elusive. And the ruler being down in the fourth house could suggest even trying to find one's emotional place of belonging through romantic connection, like trying to find unconditional love through their love life. Now, that being said, he has a lot of other things in his chart. He's got so he's in Aries, right? It's ruled by a Mars and Taurus. So that's a very different Aries than like an Aries who's got a Mars in like Aquarius. Very, very different. Mars and Taurus is, I'm going to take action, and it's a lusty, it's very nice. I love Taurus for Venus or Mars, because I have a Venus in Virgo, but there's a being in the physical body, there's a slowness with Taurus. So for some people who have Mars and Taurus, they have a really hard time making a decision and changing course. That's not their nature. The nature of Mars and Taurus is to keep doing the same thing. So I say it's kind of like a big, huge barge in the ocean, having to get it. It's not the same as a little speedboat that can, like a Mars and Gemini type, they're bouncing from thing to thing to thing, or from relationship to relationship. Mars in Taurus is much more just slower. Now you have your in Aries, but you've got it ruled by Mars in Pisces, which is mutable like Gemini. So there's this ability to kind of shape shift, to kind of go where we need to go. And to even like justify, well, I'm going to go try this, or I'm going to go try this. I dated a guy that's in Aries with the Mars and Pisces, and he was a fantastic lover. I mean, there's that, which is great. And I do like your Mars connections. They sextile each other. Pisces and Taurus are archetypes that definitely, it's like a beautiful clay pitcher that you're going to pour clear water into. They they definitely complement one another. His Mars in the ninth, now that's a Sagittarius house. So here's, if he's athletic at all, it's something I see with like Mars in the ninth. People who have just there's like an authenticity, an appreciation for the earthy, and if he's good with his hands or he likes to, he feels like a pretty sexy person. Not to be, I have no idea who this is. Maybe he's not. But from my perspective, my subjective viewpoint would be like someone who's pretty masculine, and who is pretty physical, I would imagine, sexual, that kind of thing. Kind of perhaps a bit of a hedonist even. He's got, South Node in Scorpio too. So, okay, now let's just discuss, and I'm kind of bouncing around here. You know how I do. Let's talk about his South Node for a sec and his Pluto, because that's important. So he's got a South Node at 18 and 19 of Scorpio, and looks like they're opposite that Mars of his. So, Scorpio South Node, this is everybody within 18 months of him. Their South Nodes in Scorpio. Okay, so it's important, but it's more like the wave of souls coming forward with these themes of past life incarnations where they had to face death of some kind. His is ruled by Pluto. It's in the second house for him. That's survival. That's like I have to hold on to what I have. I have to like bury my money in the ground in the backyard because there's like people attacking our town. It's looting our houses, that kind of thing. It's just there's sort of a quality of experiencing having to hold on to holding one's ground. Okay, so he's then come forward in this incarnation as a Mars in Taurus, right? There's still going to be a quality of his truth may come through a belief that he has to hold on to what is his, fight for what he thinks is worth fighting for, otherwise kind of sitting back and waiting, that kind of thing. So he does also have, it looks like, a little yod, although it looks like that's making aspect to his Chiron. So we're not going to worry too much about that. I mean, I wonder his approach sort of to, the chart ruler for him is his Chiron and Gemini in the ninth, which could be someone who has an interest in existential things, like why are we here? Where are we going? What's life all about? Other things in his chart, he may be open. Mercury and Aries individuals they like new information. They're always hungry for new information, and they tend to be impatient too. They want it right now, and sort of like never satisfied, satiated, I suppose. I just sort of wonder if, I don't know, it just kind of feels like in his past incarnations, it feels like there's a bit of he had to hold his ground as far as his understanding of the world around him. He had to know, for example, how to travel through the forest at night in the dark. You know what I mean? Like, he had to understand what was all around him so he would be safe. And he may be someone who's really good at sort of sensing what's in his environment even. So, okay, now his sun being in Aries, it's in the 8th house, so that's a Scorpio house. We do have someone, there's a quality, Aries is very just instinctive. Aries as an archetype is just about taking action, okay? Just independently emerging, initiating. There's no thought involved. Ruled by a Mars in Taurus, that does give this sort of someone who's going to take pride either in their physical body or in their sense of sort of sensate knowledge, the ability to kind of navigate through this world. Jupiter in the 5th too could indicate someone who has a certain level of even bravery. If he does anything that is, a service-oriented kind of career, if he does anything like in health and fitness, or I have no idea what he does for work, but client work would be great for a chart like this. Probably is somebody actually is really good at inspiring other people, activating them, getting them going. So, okay. Anywho, just taking a peek back at your chart, your South Node being in Gemini in the 11th house, conjunct Venus. This one, in my mind, the ruler for you, it's Mercury, and you have it in Aries in the 10th. And it feels like a past life where there's a big collective event, or it was during a period of time where the community, there's an element of movement of goods, or so for example, think pioneers putting all their stuff in their wagons and moving across the country, that kind of thing. There's a quality of just having to get things from one place to another, maybe having a business. It is a Venus, which has to do many times with our money. Venus for you rules your fourth house, which is the home and the family, the domestic scene, and you have Uranus in the fourth house. So you could have experienced some upheaval. You may have been someone in a past incarnation who lost your family or lost your mother in particular with Uranus in the fourth. So there can be, if in this incarnation you ever feel like you're the different one in your family, or there can be an element of feeling like I'm not quite sure where home is at, or friends end up becoming like family, that kind of thing with Uranus in the fourth. Or your family could have been different from your friends' families, in some way, that kind of thing. There's just a soul memory of my family, my foundation, my roots not being something super reliable. Even if you had a marriage that was wonderful in a past life, it was like, but we lived out in the middle of nowhere and we were constantly being attacked by, natives or something like that. It's just this sort of where am I safe? There's kind of a where am I safe quality, and needing to know what's going to happen so you can, prepare for it, that sort of thing. At any rate, now he's got that 18 degree nodal axis. And so for you, it's going to be landing kind of in your 4th and your 10th, lands in that axis for you. So South Node in Scorpio is, down in your 4th house. That's home, family, the clan, the roots. Could have very well been a part of your family. Could have been a part of, the fact that your charts are so similar, I'm really excited to look at the composite. I haven't looked at it yet. You guys are both experiencing this Uranus transit to your sun, which both of you are going to be undergoing. It's like a big time for identity liberation. And people tend to be a little zany or a little crazy, or they do things where, you're like, whoa. Your friends might be like, whoa, what are you doing? You just up and went on a road trip across the country. Just people just kind of tend to do sort of unpredictable things when Uranus is conjunct their sun. And I had, or like there's a hippie quality. There can be this desire to identify with the sort of counterculture, or more of a rebellious kind of lifestyle. So at any rate, both you guys are going to be sort of experiencing some big, I would imagine, some pretty big shifts in how you see yourselves. He will be having Uranus making an inconjunct to his Saturn. And that's a funky, he's got this Saturn, it's conjunct his South Node. It's widely conjunct, but it is, it's 7 degrees away. It's within 10 degrees, so it's within orb, which would suggest that he himself in a past incarnation was some sort of an authority figure, or he was someone who felt like he had to hold it all together. With Saturn in the 3rd, the way that he looks at the world around him, how he understands his world. Saturn there can say there's some restriction. There's an element of like, I got to keep it all in control, or keep things under my hat. Or for some people, Saturn in the 3rd can just be communication, and it can be hampered to a certain extent. Now, Saturn retrograde means it's his job to rewrite the rules for himself in this incarnation. And so he's got to kind of bump up against the rules first, and in order to decide for himself like what's true. And authority figures, which rules am I going to follow, and which ones am I going to throw out the window? So that's going to be, I would imagine, what he's sort of been experiencing this year and will be continuing to experience until Uranus moves into Taurus. Okay, so that being said, let's take a little peek here at I just want to look at his South Node, 18 and 19. I should know this. I do know 19. 19 that's my IC. So 18 is a rope going up into the sky, and 19 is a serpent wrapped around an immense egg. So you can imagine a serpent wrapped around an immense egg. We just barely earlier were saying how in a past incarnation he had to kind of hold the fort. So he may have quite literally lived on a fort, that kind of thing. He may have had a job where he was someone who stood lookout, or had to do something where it was, especially with Saturn and Scorpio, that has a military quality to it. It's like authority, being an authority figure, or a guard, or a protector of some kind. And with it in Scorpio, it makes me feel like you're hidden, or it's nighttime, and it's, I have to know what's going on around me in order to keep everybody safe. So sort of wonder if that was a role that he played. The ruler of his South Node is Pluto, and it's in the 2nd house. Pluto's important. It shows where he's faced death, right? And it's he's got a yod, a finger of God, coming to his Pluto from Chiron, as well as from, looks like the moon, and Mercury, basically, and really his Venus. So in the 7th house, this to me feels a bit like he may have, in a past life, maybe even self-sacrificed, because the Pisces on the 7th house cusp for him, I wonder if in a past life he died for protecting sort of his family. He's got Neptune down in the 4th, and just with everything else in his chart, it feels like someone who, especially Saturn and Scorpio, can definitely be conjunct the South Node, that you were the one who was protecting people, but then you got shot with a bow and arrow or whatever, and ended up perhaps passing away. So North Node being in Taurus in the 9th house sort of suggests there's an element of staying here and not having that happen again, right? Like there's his 19-degree North Node. I know that one is it's like a blank signpost. So it sort of says you get to make of your life what it is you want to. It's not going to be dictated to you. It's like it's up to you. And he's also got Taurus, we round up, Taurus 19. A crown turns into goat horns. So in this incarnation, a crown turns into goat horns, and then we have a fork in the road with a blank signpost. So the crown turns into goat horns has to do with transition, going from maybe a past incarnation where, especially conjunct Saturn, there's a quality of having been an authority figure or someone in a position of, where you were kind of in charge. You might have been the one who was carrying out the rules that were written by someone else. And then, goat horns, of course, to me, there's a lot of ways you can take that. It feels more animalistic, a bit more hedonistic, I suppose. And then a fork in the road with a blank signpost kind of says it's his turn to decide for himself how he is going, which path he's going to take. Okay, so now with his nodes, just looking here, as far as aspects, we have your moon, of course. So your moon makes a trine to the South Node. We have some other more minor aspects. We've got your MC is also making kind of an inconjunct, really, to his South Node. And that would suggest, the MC being your title, who it was that you were in a past incarnation, maybe. To me, this feels he may. If you believe that you two were, somehow had connection in your past incarnation, you may have had some sort of authority role over him, or there may have been. You may have been older than him, just like you are in this life too. There's that too. Then, as far as your nodes, we do have, of course, Chiron. So his Chiron. And his Mars too, really. Mars in Taurus, his Chiron that's in Gemini in his series, all are conjunct his North Node. And as far as South Node goes, let's see. Oh, sorry, I just said that backwards. I meant your, your North Node. You probably knew what I meant. Your North Node is conjunct his Mars. His Mars, Chiron, and Ceres. And there I go saying it wrong again. I apologize. Your South Node, your Gemini South Node, is in his 9th house. So that would sort of say, like, in a past life, especially with conjunct Mars. Mars in Gemini in the 9th house, because the 9th house is sort of a house of ideology and belief, it does have a bit of a, I'm fighting for something I believe in. I'm fighting for a cause I believe in. It could also be sexuality. That's possible. With Mars conjunct Chiron, it could even be the body having been injured and, having a wound and needing to be nursed back to health. That's even a possibility. And with your South Node sort of falling conjunct that Chiron in the 9th in Gemini, his Chiron in the 9th in Gemini, which is then ruled by his Mercury and Aries in the 7th, which kind of says he may have had an injury in a past life that someone else had the know-how, knew how to save him or heal him or fix him or something, So I'm curious. I'm like super curious, like what he does for work and that kind of thing. So just let me know. This kind of feels a bit like his life might have been in your hands at one point. So now I want to look at, as far as your North Node, you've got that North Node in Sagittarius. It's in his 3rd house. I always feel like that's a do-over kind of a placement. as far as synastry. And we'll look at this in more depth when we do the synastry between the two of you. But, your North Node, your life path in Sagittarius, the Sagittarius North Node of yours, in his third house of his worldview, his perspective, you're here to perhaps help him see things in a new way that he's never seen them before. I would also say, with it being in Sagittarius, you've got it, I believe, ruled by Aries, right? Your Jupiter. So in the ninth, it might be, to a certain extent, your job to help him uncover the truth. You've got Jupiter opposite your Pluto exactly. So that's sort of like the truth of your soul. And I believe the past life truths, the things that you experienced in past incarnations, like deaths that you experienced. Okay, so let's look at the two of you together. We'll look at the composite now. Let's get into a little more detail here. So we've got a 27-degree Aries sun in the ninth house, and we do have a Venus and Taurus, 6 degrees. So the Venus is about 9 degrees away. That's nice. Composite charts, we like to see that. Tends to indicate you have a relationship between two people that like each other, at least. There's a Mars in Aries and in the 8th house. So that's a very sexual Mars placement, opposite Pluto, conjunct Mercury. It feels bantery to me. It feels very sexy talk, and very quick. Like Mars and Aries in a relationship chart is definitely one where it's like hopping into the sack, and even almost like there's a quality of the 8th house being obsessive, or even sort of like compulsive, like, when you're sick and you have to throw up and you just can't help it. It's kind of has that quality to it. Not to say that it is akin to throwing up, but you know what I'm saying. It's just like reflexive. You can't help it. I'm going to drink some of this real fast. And opposite Pluto, Pluto, of course, you then throw in this sort of, it's tied into your combined fate or your combined destiny, the physical body. Maybe it's something like in a past incarnation with Mars, even the Mars conjunct the, your South Node, his Mars conjunct your South Node. Maybe you guys were lovers in a past life. And then perhaps he did go off to fight, or, and lost his life, or was injured or wounded or something. And being able to kind of, look, I'm here again, I have a new body, it works. Look, it works. Kind of has that vibe to me. But when we look at the nodal axis for you guys, well, let me back up here. So Sun in Aries at 27 degrees, you currently have transing Uranus sitting on top of the relationship Sun. So that's a time, a lot of times with relationships, where the relationship may undergo a bit of a, I'm sorry, I'm going to take these, I hope these earrings haven't been driving you nuts. They're tapping my headphones. The relationship tends to undergo something pretty unexpected, or some sort of shift. If you're open to relationship like dynamics where there's an openness, like where it's, maybe it's with this girlfriend, but also with you, that's very possible. It just depends on the two. Because you guys are both getting the same influence in both of your personal charts, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that unfolded for you. And this has been happening. This, Uranus is retrograde right now. So it's been kind of moving back and forth over the sun of the relationship and over both of your Aryan planets. And so you both may have sort of been experiencing this, like, liberation, I suppose. Now, because your moon is in Cancer, the liberation is, in the end, ultimately probably not going to be, it's going to be more difficult, and the relationship itself has a moon in Taurus, which would suggest there's a desire for emotional commitment and security in the relationship. And that's also at 27 degrees of Taurus. And it is also making a square to the nodes of the moon of the relationship. So the south node of this relationship is in Leo at 24 and 26 degrees of Leo, okay, conjunct, the ascendant. And, that's ruled by the sun being in Aries. Could have been it really could have been a relationship, like a love relationship in a past incarnation, like lovers being lovers. And, it feels pretty visceral. The emotional components to this aren't as, the moon is opposite Uranus, and it's a nice, pretty strong opposition, which would suggest emotionally it's going to be an exciting, electrifying relationship, but not a secure relationship. Not one that's meant to sort of be the thing you hang your hat up on at the end of the day. It could be really a huge teacher and a liberator, but Yeah, the moon also being opposite Uranus could even indicate with the squaring the nodes that you as the female, if that was the case in a past incarnation, you may not have been faithful. So he could have been your lover. He may have just been like a younger guy. I mean, it's the younger guy now. And so, but you may have had a relationship because the moon's in the 10th, which says you are the authority figure. You're the one who's kind of in charge. And because it squares the nodal axis, it suggests that this isn't the first time at the rodeo, so to speak. And the South Node being in Leo and in the Aryan first house is very passionate, feels very much like a romantic connection in a past incarnation. Um, and that makes a trine to the Sun in Aries up in the 9th. And the truth of the relationship to me feels like it was one of passion. It was meant to be a relationship that was sort of heated and dreamy and romantic. Neptune in the 5th also feels like a almost it's like when the boys have to go off to war and it's like one last hurrah before they go because they might die, kind of a thing, because Neptune is at 22 degrees of Sagittarius in the 5th, which can indicate that's a degree that's known as the kill or be killed degree. So it kind of has this this is a do or die, sort of a quality of being it's our last chance. And what's that one saying, feast now because tomorrow you may be dead, or whatever it is. So it's just really sort of living life to the fullest and just being right in the moment. At the same time, with the Mars and the Mercury in the 8th house, you have to be careful with things being communication between the two of you that's hidden. And with opposite Pluto as well. So Pluto's kind of right on the cusp of the 2nd and 3rd house, even like obsessively being obsessed with one another, stalking each other, because that kind of thing can happen in these sort of relationships when we have soul connections. So I'll just throw that out there. Now, the other thing to note is the Sun of the relationship makes a trine to Neptune and also a trine to the South Node. The Sun-Neptune trine can be very much like, this feels like a soulmate, like I've known you before, this feels familiar, this feels like soul family. But it can also be one of delusion or of illusion, or one where the relationship itself is definitely, and I don't say that to say that it's not meant to be in your life, right? But it's like we have to be sure that we're being really clear with ourselves about what it is that we are to each other and what the boundaries are with things. Because the moon in this relationship chart, this placement, it's at the very top of the chart, meaning it's kind of like the moon represents both you, right? So you being the authority figure and being, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna take a drink of this. Being the one who is, sort of being seen by the outer world. It's like the reputation of the relationship. And with an opposite Uranus, the relationship might make you at times do things a little crazy. You may like act out in ways that wouldn't be your normal way of acting out. You may even be possessive with the moon being in Taurus. There can be a quality of possessiveness with it ruled by, a 15-degree Ceres in Taurus. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to for sure be that way, but it's a possibility. The relationship could also be just one where it's sticks around for a long time, even though you do have Neptune and you have Uranus in here. It's very volatile, like unpredictable energy, to be honest. And it looks fun. I'll just say it looks like a fun combination, a passionate, but one that's going to be like a roller coaster. We'll just put it that way. The North Node of the relationship is in Aquarius in the 7th house, and it's about liberating. The relationship is here to liberate you. It's here to liberate you guys from, in a sense, maybe even other relationships that you guys are in. It's possible. Because the South Node being in the 1st house says in the past incarnation, it's almost like it didn't get to get finished. The relationship didn't get to fully evolve or fully develop. But I will also say the North Node in Aquarius in the 7th house could indicate this is meant to be a relationship that has an unorthodox arrangement to it. Like you might see this in the chart of like a sugar daddy and his sugar baby, not to say that's what you guys are, but you know what I'm saying, just, or the relationship between swingers, or the relationship between people who are like, we're together, we see each other off and on, but we're not like married, we're lovers, that kind of thing. So it's kind of up to you guys to decide what feels right for you. So I'm going to stop right here. So what we'll do in part 2 is we will look at the synastry. We'll go through the whole synastry chart. And then part 3, we're going to look at the composite, which we've been touching on. I've just been playing around with it a little bit because there's going to be a little bit of a wait before I can get to the other parts of your chart because I'm obviously so far behind with everything. But if you have questions, let me know. And the sooner you message me, the better, because it'll still be kind of fresh in my mind. I forgot I wanted to mention really quickly the north node of the relationship. So 24 and 26 of Aquarius, and we round up. So we have a mustache, disciplined, constrained, and consistent, which is hilarious for an Aquarius degree to be like, about following the rules. And then we have a man laying stones for a path. So these 2 degrees, in my mind, are kind of like, they have this quality of the mustache, obviously very masculine and reserved or contained, that kind of thing. But then also the laying stones for the path feels like we're preparing for something in the future down the road, maybe. And the north node of the relationship is conjunct the descendant. Now, granted, his birth time of 4 p.m. probably isn't exact, so it's a very good chance that the north node isn't exactly conjunct the descendant of the relationship. And I believe that the 7th house indicates in a relationship chart the relationship's relationship to other relationships. And so when I see this many times, I think the north node being here, perhaps it's our job to even, experience each other through that dynamic of you dating someone else, him dating someone else, you dating each other, just sort of that experience of what relationship even is, what it means, that kind of thing. Okay, we're going to stop here. If you have questions, let me know. 385-497-9470. Okay, thanks, Laura. Bye.